As I searched for the appropriate reading for today, I came across this poem on UU Worship Web, and I want to give proper credit. Mark Hicks reworked this poem that was originally written anonymously by a gay high school student. He adapted it. So we can only credit Dr. Mark Hicks because we don't know who the anonymous original author is. But since we're talking today about who is essential and who matters, and I said this would be a universalist service, I could think of nothing more universal than talking about the first principle and what it means to really matter. Now, I remember reading Animal Farm as a teenager. Perhaps you've read that book. The animals all come together to build this egalitarian society, and all the animals are equal, but eventually some animals become more equal than others. And I wonder if that's the society we're building, and if that's the society we want to live in, where some animals, some of us, are more equal than others. We've had a lot of time over the last few months to think about what it means to be essential. Now, I moved here from what is known as the DMV. And if you haven't lived in the DMV, you might be excused for thinking that the DMV means the Department of Motor Vehicles. But in the greater DC metro area, the DMV means the District, Maryland, and Virginia, the greater Washington, DC metropolitan area. And we in the DMV are very familiar with the term essential workers, essential people, because in the DMV, people don't know how to deal with snow. I mean, any kind of snow. So there are all kinds of partial snow days and partial shutdowns. And during the winter, you'll listen to the radio or the TV and it will tell you that the government is shut down because many other school districts and other governments and businesses follow the federal government's lead. And the federal government will say that there's a liberal leave policy, or everyone is shut down except for essential workers. And if you're essential, you know who you are. Now, for much of my time living in the DMV, I was a nurse. Guess what? If you work in a hospital, if you're a nurse, you're essential. In fact, you're that kind of essential that when the hospital goes on snow emergency, they can keep you there beyond your shift. You kind of move into the hospital. They don't have to let you go home. But what does it mean to be non-essential? And what does it mean in the greater scheme of things to be essential? We've found out in the last few months that essential people are some of the lowest paid people and some of the folks who often don't get all the benefits that we keep saying everybody should be entitled to. Essential workers, as it turns out, are delivery drivers and grocery store clerks and cashiers and restaurant workers, who, by the way, are some of the lowest paid folks out there. Folks who are expected to work for tips, servers. It's legal to pay those people below minimum wage even. And of course, caregivers, healthcare providers, and the support staff in healthcare facilities, and all those doing the most difficult work and the work that puts folks at the most risk. So my question is, are we treating essential people, essential workers, as expendable people? And what does that mean then for what we deem as essential? Well, let's deal with this question first. If we really believe that some people are essential and others are not, well, we'll deal with that in a moment. You would think that we would take extra special care of those folks whom we consider essential. We would make sure that they are protected at work, that they have health care, that they have the leave they need, that they have all the benefits that they are entitled to, that they have a living wage. But as it turns out, these are not the highest paying jobs. These are not the most secure jobs. As it turns out, these are some of the highest risk jobs. And if we are saying that there are people who are essential for the operation of our economy, what does that mean outside of just dollars and cents? Is there anybody who is not an essential being? Well, our history tells us that we have believed this in the past. And before we get on a high Unitarian Universalist horse, because I know our first principle states that we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, I would like to remind us all of a part of our uglier past. The American Unitarian Association, at the turn of the last century, at the beginning of the 20th century, was a strong promoter of the eugenics movement. The AUA published books supporting eugenics, eugenics being a logical and reasonable, and in case you don't get my sarcastic tone, that was a sarcastic tone, a logical and reasonable social Darwin theory. The AUA published books supporting the furtherance of the white race, while we humanely, of course, did all we could to discourage breeding by those who were less apt to contribute to what we considered to be what society should be. This was not our shining moment. This was not affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of every person. This was not a time in which we believed that every person was essential. So what would it mean if we truly did live by our first principle? Now, we can get a little ugly with this sometimes. Is it about putting myself first? Is it about putting my own needs first and saying I can do whatever I want because it's about my inherent worth and dignity? Or is it about honoring others? Is it about taking a step back and saying, am I considering my impact on others? Am I considering how I am making space for others here? Am I considering everyone's needs? Well, I'll tell you. Just yesterday, our president held his own Nuremberg rally. I mean a rally in Tulsa. But you know, as long as I've brought up Hitler, Hitler based the Nuremberg laws, the Nazis based the Nuremberg laws on the Jim Crow laws that were based on, that used eugenics as a justification. And our own president is echoing much of that today. He's trying to undo rights for LGBTQ people. This is Pride Month. This is Pride Month. And the Supreme Court has come down to say he can't do some of the things he's been wanting to do. But he's trying to strip rights away during Pride Month. And at the same time, people are marching in the streets and declaring Black Lives Matter. And so we must also acknowledge the intersectionality here, for it was a Black trans woman who began Pride. We cannot only concentrate on the rights of one person or one group at a time. We must look at the intersectionality if we truly are going to live by the first principle, if we truly believe that every person is essential, that we will not be whole until every part of creation, until every piece of the puzzle, until all of humanity is together at last. And so I want to talk about this rally in Tulsa yesterday, because you might be saying, well, what can I do? What can I do? There's a pandemic going on. It's not safe to go out. There's so much to be done. Well, there is. Do you know that the president got trolled by teenagers and K-pop stars? Do you know what K-pop is? Korean pop. There's a whole culture around the fans for K-pop. And a lot of them are teenagers. A bunch of teenagers got together through TikTok, which is an app that I don't even know how to use yet. It's a video app. And through other social media means. And they reserved tickets for the rally and then just didn't show up. So for weeks, the president has been saying it was going to be over 1 million people. And they couldn't even fill the 19,000 seat arena. It was largely empty because all these teenagers just reserved seats and didn't show up. And that's the news story today. And that's really big. Those teenagers are essential. And they were essential before they did anything. Because they are living, breathing humans. Now here's the tricky thing. All those people who did show up, all those supporters of the president, they are also essential. Essential people are not just the ones we like. We are all essential. If we are truly going to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, yes, we can center marginalized people first. We can care for the marginalized first. But we cannot dismiss the oppressor. because universalist theology gives up on no one. And we will not be truly whole until we are all reconciled. This doesn't mean we can't be angry. This doesn't mean we can't be frustrated. This doesn't mean we can't have our moments. And this doesn't mean we can't ever say, stop, I'm done with you. But as a society, as a whole, we cannot forever exclude anyone. That's the hard work, isn't it? That's the hard work. And that's why we're in this together, because individually we are not equipped. Individually, we are not equipped to deal with each and every person. Some of us have been deeply harmed by another. It is not up to a wounded person to go up to the aggressor and make peace and do the work of healing the aggressor. But I want us to consider what it means as a society to say that our circle is big enough. That no one is left outside. Beloveds, in this month where there is so much turmoil, and we must celebrate Pride without parades and fanfare, but we must celebrate it. And we are cautiously understanding that we might just be turning the tide to help people recognize that Black lives do matter. I remind you yet again that each and every one of you is essential, that where you go, I will go, beloveds, that this is work we can do together. None of us is called to it alone. We may not complete it, but we will move it along. Namaste. I would like to